Hey guys, guess what? We got another Impossible Creatures speedrun video! These have been on hiatus for a while because they're hilariously unpopular. And that's fine, because art doesn't need to be observed, but they are a lot of work to make, so it's kind of hard to find time to get around to doing it, and I was kind of not bothering for a pretty long time, but then I noticed some comments on previous speedrun videos by a lovely little man named Jake, who really reignited my passion for the subject, so as long as one person's watching, really, what else can you do? Jake, this one's for you, buddy. And it's a real cracker this time, because we're doing Mission 6, and Mission 6 is bizarre. This is the one you might remember from the game if you've played through before. This is the mission where you get the gyrocopter. And the gyrocopter basically opens up just a whole new level of jankiness for this campaign. It just breaks it wide open on so many levels. But on top of that, it's also very interesting in and of itself, because there are some really strange things you can do with triggers and cinematics in this mission that you can't do, as far as I know, in any other missions. You'll see it in the playthrough itself, but first I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of the mission and how it works, because when I'm actually doing it, it's really hard to follow. I noticed this was a Mission 5 as well. I was trying to explain it and it was just going way too fast because, you know, I'm phenomenal. But basically, if I give you a little bit of an overview now of like the objectives and what you have to do to complete the mission, maybe talk a little bit about some of the weird glitches, then maybe it'll be a little easier to follow. I'll try and actually calm the replay itself a little bit better as well. So basically Mission 6 begins with you starting here by these coal piles. The first objective is to scout the entrance to the volcano, which is this place around here. Now, from a speedrun point of view, this is interesting because you get the objective to destroy all the structures at the mouth of the volcano, but you don't actually have to complete this objective. So these structures are these anti-air towers, these sound beam towers, but if you just walk straight past them, for some reason the game considers that objective complete. Now, you will have to destroy these structures later, because in order to win the mission you have to destroy every single enemy structure, which is such a bastard. I hate when Relic does that, but for now, we can leave a lot of them alone. Once you come through here, you get the objective to destroy all the structures inside the volcano. And now this includes, actually, you know what, I'll show you. Group list right here. This is, by the way, if you want to speedrun IC. You don't. But if you do, this is a really useful feature. You can check out these group lists and in the scenario editor. And you can check out, for instance, the objective might say you need to destroy all creatures in, say, enemies in Caldera, and you can check that by going triggers, and looking in here. And you can check by selecting selected. You can see all of the enemies that you need to destroy to complete that objective. Now, interestingly, even though it says you have to kill all enemies and structures in the Caldera, the only creatures you have to kill are these two here. Typically I end up killing all of them anyway, just because it's more convenient for me, but you might find a better way of doing things. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to run in really fast with Rex and Lucy before they can level up, because once they level up they start producing creatures from this chamber there, and once they do that then you've got a real fight on your hands. So the objective is to get to this creature chamber and destroy it with sabotage before they can build too many units. During this time we're also leveling up, because what you might have noticed is a lot of these sound beam towers, thankfully none of the anti-air towers, but a lot of the sound beam towers are up on cliffs, so melee units, and importantly Lucy, the most powerful melee unit, can't reach them. So that's something we're going to use flyers for. You can probably do it with range, but I prefer it with flyers because they're more versatile for the rest of the map. So you have to destroy this sound beam. You don't have to destroy, again, these two sound beams. They don't have to be destroyed just yet. But in order to complete the clear out the inside of the Caldera objective, you need to take out this one here. Once you do that, it opens up the objective to repair this gyro pad, which will be damaged. There's also a cutscene where the henchman says, "Oh, Rex, save me, Valika betrayed me," blah blah blah, one of these ones. Same as when you free the first henchman in, I think, Mission 1. Why his gyro pad is damaged and why he's in such a bad state, I don't know, because I didn't rough him up, but you know what, it doesn't matter. Anyway, you have to repair this gyro pad or defend it while he repairs it. And while you're defending it, the AI starts sending creatures through this tunnel. Now that's really interesting because This tunnel uses some janky triggers. Basically, it just says spawn enemy units, or not spawn, AI units, and move them to this flag here. And when there's a group of units near this flag, it despawns them and teleports them over to here, and then commands them to attack move the gyro pad. That's wacky, and what's wackier is there's a whole bunch of ways to disable it, and the primary way, for some reason, there's a trigger that says if player creatures are near the tunnel, stop using the tunnel. But the flag it uses to check proximity for player units is this flag here, which is nowhere near the tunnel. But basically the upshot of it is, if you have more of your creatures within 20 meters of this flag, that tunnel trigger stops firing. And that's kind of awful from a lot of points of view. I'll get into that later, but basically all it means is instead of sending archerfish armadillos through the tunnel, it just spams archerfish armadillos, and they sit right here and they don't move. Which, in any other level, could be great, because it means you can just absorb the pop cap here and ignore the area, but we have to destroy this water chamber. And it's difficult to do that if it's surrounded by archerfish. So anyway, that's one thing to be careful of, is to avoid having 4 units within 20 meters of this flag, and I'll show you how I do that later on. It involves exploiting the jankiness of flyers, and a little bit of RNG as well, it must be said. But basically, when I do my speedrun, I want to keep this chamber pumping archerfish armadillos through this tunnel for as long as possible, because I need to destroy this base. And this is the sort of meat and potatoes of the mission, is destroying all these buildings in here as quickly as possible. So anyway, you repair the gyro pad, and as soon as you do that, you get a cutscene where the gyrocopter henchman defects and joins your team. And this cutscene is probably the most interesting one I've found so far in the game, because if you repair the gyro pad before you get the objective to repair the gyro pad, then it only partially triggers the cinematic. So what happens is, even though it's in cinematic mode, you are not forbidden menu commands. So you can press, during the cinematic, F10 to open up the kind of main game menu. And one really cool thing you can do in there is load game. Now normally that's kind of speedrun poison, you know, because saving and loading games in IC takes a long time. It's dinosaur technology. Might take longer than usual for me because I've got so many saved games. I should really clear that up. But anyway, what you can do is load an autosave that the game makes once you've saved the gyrocopter, and that autosave is saved mid-cinematic. This is all confusing, I understand. Hopefully it makes a little more sense when you see the actual speedrun. But basically, if you load this game, it loads into the cinematic, but it does so after the triggers have forbidden your UI, which means you load the cinematic, but you still have full player controls and UI, and you can see the minimap and all that kind of stuff. Now, the camera is locked, so the usefulness of this tool is limited. But the really interesting thing about most cinematics in IC is when they trigger, typically enemy creatures go on no stance for the duration of the cinematic, and that's extremely useful. So if you can control creatures during the cinematic, you can basically get a whole bunch of free kills on the enemy. And the most important 3 kills to get are these 3 flyers here. Because after using the flyer to take out this sound beam tower here, during the cinematic, I send all my flyers down south to here to take out, for instance, this water chamber, which my melee units won't be able to reach later on, and these sound beam towers. And those flyers also have to be used later to take out this water chamber, so I need those flyers to survive. Now, because Vanilla IC is turbo dumb, flyers with regen are completely immune to sound beam towers, because sound beam towers cannot damage even small regen units faster than regeneration will restore their hit points. So my flyers of choice for this mission are Dragonfly Lobsters, which are absolute dog shit. They're terrible, but they do 14 melee damage with Barrier Destroy. I think they only have like 18 health, so anti-air towers 1-hit kill them, and all these flyers can 2-hit kill them. And also, remember, I don't want to have more than 4, or actually 4 is the trigger, I don't want to have 4 creatures within 20 meters of this flag, which really limits the number of creatures that I can send over to destroy all these buildings. So during the cinematic, I really need to capture that no stance, no aggro, free kill moment by sending 4 flyers, and 4 is the optimal number, 5 is maybe better, I haven't actually run the numbers yet, but it needs to be a number such that because of the flyer's attack pattern, they swoop in circles. Gee, this really sounds like gibberish, doesn't it? Because flyers swoop in circles, what it means is as long as they're attacking, it's very uncommon for more than 3 of them to be within 20 meters of this flag at any given time. So you can have 5 flyers here, but because of their attack arcs, only a maximum of 3 of them are close to the flag at any given time. Anyway, you move the flyers over, you park them here, and they attack these guys, which are on no stance, killing them all. That's super significant because if you don't do that, then these 3 flyers will absolutely decimate your poor little lobster dragonflies because they are super, super weak. So you take these guys out while it's on no stance. The sound beam towers don't pose a threat because you're functionally immune to them. And during the cinematic, while you're still letting it run, it's worth pointing out that this is a cinematic you do not skip because you have all this crazy control during the cinematic. And you also fly them over here to destroy this water chamber. Now while you're doing that, you need to spare 1 flyer to kill these last few sound beam towers up here. And in order to do that safely, you need to have used Lucy to take out these anti-air towers as well. You'll see me doing that in the replay, it'll all make sense when you see it. Anyway, next thing that happens in the cinematic is the henchman jumps in the gyrocopter and he flies off over to your base. Now, remember, during this time you're microing a whole bunch of flyers down south, but what you're also doing is using this lab to build a henchman. Now, during this cinematic, all of your henchmen are made invisible. They don't despawn, so they're still actually gathering coal, and you can see them on your minimap, but they're completely invisible. Often during the cinematic, if you are a little slow, you'll get 3 flyers fly into your base and start attacking. Or if they're already in your base, they will enter no stance mode. Because you have full control during the cinematic, and Rex and Lucy have teleported back to the lab for the cinematics, you can use Rex to shoot them down mid-cinematic. And I think I largely failed to do that in this speedrun, but it's pretty great during the cinematic when Valika is like yelling shit from a gyrocopter and Rex is just running around in the background shooting dudes. It's pretty sick. Anyway, the gyrocopter has flown over to this base, and all your henchmen are hidden, but if you build a henchman, he will spawn visible. And when he spawns here, you can pick him up with the gyrocopter, and mid-cinematic, fly him all the way over here to the enemy base, which will not be producing creatures, and drop here. And if you've been clever about how you set it up, so if before the cinematic you have sent a flyer over to here and placed a creature chamber, you can use the guard function. Even though the camera is locked in an angle like this, you have sent the gyrocopter and the henchman over to here. And you can unload, and then if you have them in a hotkey group, you select the hotkey group and then you use the guard function. And you click on the minimap, you click here on the minimap, and they will automatically build any structures they see here. Now obviously you can't directly command them to build the creature chamber because the camera is locked over here, but the guard function means they will automatically build any structures, or build and repair actually, any structures nearby to their current location. And that means even though the cinematic is running and all the enemy creatures are on no stance, you are building an attack force here in the enemy base. Now, that brings us to the reason why we don't skip this cinematic, and that's because thanks to this awful weird glitch that is frankly game breaking, you can do all the things that you would be doing if you weren't in a cinematic, as long as you play your cards right, while the enemy creatures are on no stance. So essentially you get a lot of free time and free carnage to just absolutely run riot in this base. You'll see that again during the actual replay. It's something that doesn't make a lot of sense when you're saying it out loud. Anyway, there's phase 2 to the cinematic then. which is when Rex and Lucy, having acquired the gyrocopter technology, decide to jump in the lab and fly away to the next island. Now, it's pretty poorly written. It doesn't make a lot of sense how it happens, but Valika wants to show you the wrath of a woman scorned, and so as the lab is flying away, some eel killer whales with eel tail, they're actually adorable and I love them very much, shoot the lab, inexplicably dealing 4,000 damage in one hit, and it flies in this kind of wonky circle, damaged, and it comes back around to land here. With their escape ruined, Rex and Lucy decide that they need to destroy all of the structures on this island to give them the opportunity to escape, despite the fact that that doesn't involve killing the eels at all, which still exist and can still drop apparently 4,000 damage per hit, so you know, whatever, you do you. This cinematic is another just fascinating one, because we've still got full menu control, and that means we can save the game at any point during this scene. Now, my chosen course of action is to wait until the lab flies over the ocean around here, and then save the game, and then immediately load the game. And what this does is it interrupts the lab's path, and wherever you save the game, if you load at that place, the lab just drops. It just drops to the ground. And conveniently, the ground is at the bottom of the ocean. Now, there's this weird thing that happens in IC where if the lab is underwater, even partially, even if you drop it on the beach here, it is unattackable. It cannot be attacked. Even artillery cannot hit it. It just phases into a pocket reality where it's completely invincible, but it can still do all the lab stuff you know and love. It can still research levels and build henchmen, and you can still garrison your fellas in it and all that good stuff. So, that brings me to the reason why I'm not afraid of archerfish armadillos on this mission, because once you drop the lab to the bottom of the world, and once the gyropad has been destroyed either by the enemy or by me to claim back the resources, the archerfish armadillos will instead make a beeline for your base in untold numbers, just a never-ending stream of them. And as long as they're building archerfish armadillos, they will not build defenses at their base. In fact, they love them so much that if they reach pop cap and you kill all their henchmen, they won't build more henchmen, they'll build more archerfish armadillos. And ordinarily, in any other circumstance, this would be a real problem. Either you'd have to do a whole bunch of micro, because, I mean, they're artillery, they're the player's best friend in the campaign, you can just run circles around them and get them to kill themselves. But they spawn in such untold numbers that if you're doing this, you don't really have time to micro your attack on the enemy base, and you are quite likely to lose your lab, or at least Rex and Lucy. So, by parking the lab at the bottom of the ocean in the octopus's garden, it just means that all of the archerfish armadillos swim over the top of it and just sit there. They just hang out. Eventually some of them will come over here and attack any structures you may have left, but they'll never be able to destroy the lab, and it takes them long enough to get your henchmen over here that you can build a workshop and mine coal for long enough to sustain your entire enemy base attack. And you just never have to worry about the archerfish armadillos. They're just never a threat. And that's pretty damn sick. Now, is at this point where we must be really careful, because we've got flyers over here destroying this water chamber, destroying the sound beam towers, and still trying to avoid triggering this flag. So after we do that, after we destroy this water chamber, we have to very carefully manage the flyers. I like to park them here, because sometimes while you're attacking the enemy base, they will send henchmen down south to build a workshop here, and that's bad news, because that's a long way from your army, and you still have to destroy that structure if you want to win the map. So you just park your flyers here for a while. But then the time comes when you've destroyed most of the enemy base using the creature chamber that you built here, and my suggestion for this is hyena lobsters, because I only want to bother researching level 3 in this game. I don't think it's worth going level 4, because hyena lobsters put out, I think, 16 damage with barrier destroy and pack, and they're cheap enough that you can make a whole bunch of them. Now, they're pretty squishy, but since you have the gyrocopter over here absorbing sound beam towers, the gyrocopter is almost immune to sound beam towers, you can just run riot. You can destroy all the sound beam towers, it's not a problem with your hyenas. But then, because I don't want to build a water chamber, my hyena lobsters are ground only. And that's bad news, because that means they can't get this water chamber. But I've still got my flyers. My flyers have barrier destroy. They will also make pretty short work of this water chamber. But then the specifics of the tunnel trigger come into play, because the way the tunnel works, and this is a pretty sneaky way that Relic decided to absolutely ruin my life. The way the tunnel trigger works is, this water chamber spawns one Archerfish Armadillo, and it waits. When the water chamber has spawned a second Archerfish Armadillo, then they move together to the point here. Which means that almost always there is one Archerfish Armadillo sitting here just waiting to attack your very squishy flyers. So you can't just directly attack this water chamber or all your flyers will die. My solution to this is to use my gyrocopter after tanking all these sound beam hits to fly around and down to here, because if I show you the current build map, this is also a very useful tool. You can build a sound beam tower quite close, right on this edge here, close enough to attack any Archerfish Armadillos that may spawn. And as long as your flyers are attacking the water chamber, the enemy creatures are not commanded to attack flyers, they're just on aggressive stance. So if you attack the enemy creatures, you draw their aggro, and one thing that's really good for doing that is a sound beam tower, especially since you can have your gyrocopter build the sound beam tower and then repair it. Or, if you place the function and then simply use the guard function on it, it will automatically build and then repair the tower rather. What's good about using the gyrocopter in this situation is that it doesn't matter how many hits the sound beam tower takes from the splash damage, the gyrocopter will not be hit by the splash. If it was a henchman repairing it on the ground, then he would get hit by splash damage and eventually die, but the gyrocopter won't get hit by that splash damage. You do need to make sure that you control the sound beam tower and attack each and every Archerfish Armadillo that spawns in order to keep its aggro, because every now and again one will spawn, and if its friend is being attacked by the sound beam tower, it will get a few shots off at your flyers and probably kill one before they decide to go into the tunnel. So you need to micro the tower pretty carefully, and while you're doing this, you are destroying the majority of this base with your hyena lobsters, if you time it right. My timing is not phenomenal for this, it must be said, but if you time it right, you can finish destroying this water chamber while you destroy the last structures here. And that means you basically optimally destroy all the structures in the level. Now, one last note, one thing that I like to do is, because I dropped a henchman over here, and because this this crocodile turtle right here is broken, because defense in Vanilla IC is absolutely unbelievable. 90 defense is just off the charts. This guy takes absolutely forever to kill, and he will go through like 5 or 6 hyena lobsters on his own, easy, no worries, even if he's surrounded. So I like to draw his aggro with my poor brave henchman. I run him down here, out through the gates of the base, get the crocodile's attention, and then run south so that I can destroy the remainder of these buildings with my hyena lobsters without them getting attacked. Now, I'm aware that that probably didn't make any sense. I probably should have written a script or something before I started doing this, because it was definitely all over the place, and there are a lot of really cool, janky things in this mission that I just didn't make use of in this playthrough. For instance, if you want to avoid aggro from these guys, you can sneak Rex and Lucy, show you random pass now, along the edge of this cliff here, technically walking on cliff tiles that don't look like they're passable, and that means you will just stay exactly one tile out of their line of sight, but I prefer to aggro them so I can take out this anti-air tower with Lucy's sabotage. This gets interesting because sometimes when you're climbing up this slope, this spitting cobra will get in your way and you'll run around it into their line of sight. So you can use Rex's DNA gather ability to shoot the spitting cobra, which will make it flinch and run out of the way, in so much as a snake can run, and that gives you a free path through there. Like I say, a lot of really crazy janky shit, and this map is like super cool. It's not just because of the way it's broken, it's also a mission where you get a hell of a lot of stocks. There's like 6 or something, and some of them are really useful. Specifically, hyena is absolutely essential for my continuing speedrun stuff. Like, I don't think I use any of the other ones in this mission, but you might. I mean, crocodile's decent, panther's alright, it doesn't have loner in Vanilla IC. Gorilla's not really worth your time, but I get them all anyway because I'm just like that. It's for you. It's all for you, Jake. For you. That's sweet prince. Anyway, I'm going to let you see the replay now, and I'm going to try and do commentary. It's going to be speedy, so I'm going to be talking like a fucking racehorse commentator. But hopefully you'll get to see all the things that I've kind of described. Yeah, enjoy. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I can try and explain. But really, your best bet, if you want to have a go at speedrunning this mission, is to get amongst it and do some crazy stuff. Because like I say, there's some really fun things you can do. Like, you can spawn a phantom gyrocopter that regenerates health and doesn't have a henchman in it. It's not as useful as I wanted it to be for my speedrun strat, but it might fall into your strat just perfectly. Anyway, like I said, enjoy the video, and don't like or subscribe. That's all. See you around.